friends, this is Caitlin, and today we're going to be making a beautiful scene card this is themed fall but could easily be changed up for any season. And I'm going to be combining some Copic coloring and some ink blending to get it done in an easy and quick way. Well, quick for me. So I'm going to be starting out with the Harvest Wishes stamp set from Sweet November Stamps. This is one of my favorites, and I already have a mask cut out for my little mouse because I did do a larger 5x7 framed version of this scene just for fun and for myself, and I fell in love with it so much that I decided that I had to put it into a card form to share with you all today. So I stamped in my little mouse, I put his mask in place, and that mask is just the stamped image on a full stick post-it note that I fussy cut out. And I'm going to be making him sit on top of this little pumpkin, and I'm putting him in the corner because that's where he's going to be in the finished scene, just so that I know my pumpkin is lined up correctly. And before we jump into the coloring, now is a great time to go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that way you never miss any Friday card inspiration videos with me in the future. So I'm going to start out by coloring in my mouse with my warm gray markers, and I'm going in, I did use some of my darkest markers on this. I really wanted to create a very high contrast because this is going to be a night scene, and I really wanted my shadows to stand out. So while I'm coloring him in, I also just wanted to let you know that there is a challenge going on right now over on Sweet November Stamps Facebook group. It's called Friends of Sweet November Stamps. It's just a Facebook group that anybody can join if you love Sweet November Stamps. And there's an October challenge going on right now. So you just have to be using a Sweet November Stamps image, and that can be a clear stamp or digital stamp. It has to be new projects. You can enter up to 3 times. There's a couple other guidelines listed there, and this is going on through the 9th of November. So you have plenty of time if you want to enter, and they're going to be picking someone randomly to get a $30 gift card, which for anybody that uses the digital stamps, especially from Sweet November Stamps, you know the $30 will go a very long way. Like, it'll get you some good clear stamps, but if you are open to some digital images, I mean, that's a whole collection for $30. So I just wanted to let you know, in case you aren't a member of the Facebook group already, to go check that out so you can enter in a chance to win, because I love Sweet November Stamps. So I shaded in my little mouse. I shaded in his ear nice and bright and pink. I gave him a little orange scarf because I do want this to read as more of a fall themed card. So we're going to give him a little Halloween scarf. I gave him some dark green, foresty green eyes. And now I'm going in with my pumpkin. And I wanted to kind of play with some different colors today. So I am creating one of those more cream colored, kind of very soft, pale, creamy orange pumpkins. And so I'm starting by laying in my shadows with that E43. I am putting a lot of marker down, and that's because, again, this is going to be a night scene, and because my shadow color isn't super dark, I wanted to make sure that my shadows were still really bold and present. So I blended that out with some E41, and then just to start adding in some of those warm or very still subtle but warmer tones, I grabbed that E53, and I'm just kind of layering over and starting to blend out those shades. And then to really make that golden color pop, I brought in some Y32, and I'm just doing really big, long, sweeping kind of motions and turning my paper so that I can follow the curve of those upper parts. And then with all that blending, I felt like some of my shadows got lost. So I'm going back in with that E43 one more time to deepen all of the shadows on the lobes of the pumpkin, as well as the shadow under my mouse's little butt and his tail, where you would get that extra shading. I colored in the stem, and then it was time to add in his little pupil on his eye. I wanted him looking a little more upwards, and then I also went in to add some really cute patterning detail on his scarf. I just thought that this was such a fun way to kind of customize this. So I'm just doing little zigzags, and then I'll go back in and add 3 to 4 little dots in between each row. Again, this to me just kind of helps it read more of a Halloween or fall theme. You could easily do the same kind of thing and use, reds or greens and change up kind of the stuff around him and make this more of a winter card, you could really have a lot of fun with it. Or this obviously would still be great for Thanksgiving and, you know, the rest of November crafting as well. So once I had him all colored up, I am going to fussy cut him out, and I just took my time. This image is so easy to cut. I love images like this where there aren't little tiny detail edging pieces. It's just lots of kind of smooth edges to cut and trim out. So I placed him where he was going to go on the corner so that I could get a good estimate for where I wanted my moon mask to go. I'm going to be using these moon masks from Tim Holtz. These are already a huge favorite of mine. I'm using the biggest moon, and I am using my Wendy Vecchi magnetic board, the small one, to do all of my ink blending so I can hold my paper and my stencil in place really easily. I'm going in with Distress Oxide and Antique Linen first to get the halo glow around the moon, and then I'm going in with Villainous Potion on a blending brush, and I'm using a very light hand kind of where the purple butts up against that Antique Linen. It's okay for them to overlap. You'll still get that glow, but I'm going to intensify that color as we move away from the moon so that we get that idea of, you know, the light being cast from the moon is getting lighter and lighter, and the rest of the sky would be much darker. So then I also took some Uncharted Mariner oxide ink, and I'm blending that into the edges of the purple, and I am going to go back and forth with these colors a little bit to really get that saturation level up and make sure I get a really nice blend. We're also going to be adding shimmer and stars and grass blades on top of this, so it doesn't have to be the most beautiful, perfect, seamless blend you've ever gotten in your whole life either. And again, this is a great time to play with whatever color inks you have. It doesn't have to be purple and blue. It could be different purples and blues if you like that look, but you just have different ink. You could make this all different blues, all different purples. You could make it a sunset at the bottom. You could really play with the colors you're using. I just love these oxides, and I don't have a ton of oxides, so my choices were a little bit limited. And then to really deepen those edges, I'm going back in with Black Soot, just on the corners and under where my little mouse is going to go. And then just to make sure my moon halo still popped, I went in with just a little bit more Antique Linen right on the top, because oxides do layer really well, just to make sure that that color again popped and gave me kind of the bold look I was going for. Then I took some Lawn Fawn liquid stardust on a brush on the edge of my palette and flicked it all over my little sky for some shimmer, and I repeated that same process by adding a little bit of water to the Dr. P.H. Martin's No Bleed White, and I'm just going to flick right off of the edge of my block to get really nice teeny tiny little splatters. And then I also tap my brush on the edge of my block to get more, and I'm going in with just a little bit of the Antique Linen on the solid part of my moon, just so that it's not plain white. And now I'm going to go in with my mask, my upper moon mask, and I'm just going to start blending that into place. So see where my bottom magnet is on the darker colors, and I push the other magnet on the side where there's leftover ink on my magnetic board, and then I picked it up and I put it over my moon. Don't do that, because I got a big black splotch right on the top corner of my moon, and it turned out fine because I'm going to trim it off in the end anyway. But I was so mad that I got that far in. So if in hindsight I would wipe off my magnetic board a little more often, so that, or put paper underneath so that the ink would kind of soak into something and not just be laying on top ready to make a mess and try to make me cry. So now I'm going in with my black 100 Copic marker, and I'm just doing really broad flicking motions, letting the top edge kind of taper away. And I want this to be a little messy and crazy because these are going to be my blades of grass. So I went through and did my whole background, and now I'm going to put my mouse into place. I decided it wasn't worth holding him there. I should just go ahead and glue him. So I'm going to glue my little mouse and pumpkin down, and then I'm going to start flicking over, but not going as high up on top of my pumpkin, so that way we're not losing all of that work and detail that we went in and added. And I just continue to layer with smaller and smaller strokes going up from the very bottom, so you get that gradient of where kind of that grassy field would be up into the scene. And in the past, I've also tried this with super dark greens and it still looked pretty, but I really wanted, again, to create that kind of silhouette against the moonlight, very dramatic kind of feel. So I thought that the black worked just fine. I added a couple more grassy pieces poking up from behind the pumpkin. And now I am trimming off the excess and that little mark off of my little scene here, and it's time to add my sentiment. So I grabbed a sentiment from the Harvest Wishes stamp set. This is the Pumpkin Kisses and Harvest Wishes, that's what it says, and I'm stamping that in the same Villainous Potion oxide ink that I used on my background, just so that everything coordinates really well. And I love how this pops up against that moon, and I think the moon is such a cute way to kind of focus the attention on your sentiment. I try my hardest to clean up as I go, so here's me just kind of straightening. And when my best friend saw this card, she was like, oh my gosh, it's like he's looking up at a big piece of cheese. And I didn't even think of that when I made it, but now I can't unsee it. I just see that mouse staring up at the moon like he's just wishing it was a giant piece of cheese, and it just makes me laugh. So I took this really dark kind of indigo blue color from the Keep Me in Stitches pattern paper from My Favorite Things, and I'm going to add that as my backer panel onto a side folding A2 size card base, trimming off the little bit of white kind of excess. I never seem to cut those right. I always have a little bit of excess white sticking out somewhere. So I cleaned that up. I added some liquid glue to the back of my panel and popped him down into place, and that is this card complete. I hope you're feeling super inspired. I hope you get inspired to mix and combine your Copic coloring with your ink blending. I am so grateful that you came to hang out with me today. Hope you have an amazing week, and as always, happy crafting.